Welcome to the Global Marketing Show, the podcast for all things international business. I'm your host, Wendy Pease, president of Rapport International and a translation expert. Come along with me today as we talk to an expert in the global marketing world about facing their biggest fears, hearing about mistakes they made or saw, discussing best practices, and sharing fun travel, language, and culture stories. Welcome to the Global Marketing Show. Of course, by now, if you've listened to it, you know that the podcast is brought to you by Rapport International, who connect you to anyone, anywhere in the world by translating your words into 200 different languages, 100% satisfaction guarantee on all their work. And we have a tidbit from Rapport International. It's a moon bridge. Would you like to know about what that is? Well, in Finland and Sweden, they see a lot of the moon in the winter. And the Finnish language has a word for the beautiful, long reflection of the moon's light on a lake. It's kuunsilta. That's not one of my languages, so I'm not sure if I got the pronunciation right, but it's kuunsilta. And in Swedish, the word is mångata. So if you actually know how to speak these languages, record it on the Facebook group and let me know if I got it right or how far off I was. But thanks, Rapport International, for that tidbit. And the reason we were talking about water is because today's guest, Kael Campbell, is all about family, water, kids, business, and enjoying life. He's traveled extensively and recruited skilled people from around the globe, and he understands the importance of language in both his personal and business life. So, Kael, welcome so much to the podcast.
Thank you, Wendy. And yeah, that's a great word to learn because I've spent lots of time up in the north on lakes, and I was just looking at a website in Sweden and they automatically translated it for me to English. I'm looking at buying a company in the fishing lure business. And I might not buy it, but I might buy a fishing reel from this Swedish company because they automatically translated it into English for me. And I had a great experience on their website, and I would love to go watch the moon go down or go up and stay up in Sweden and, in Scandinavia and learn what that means in lots of other languages as well. So it's a great expression.
Yeah, I love words from around the world. I mean, there's no direct translation for so many words. And so when you capture some of those, it's like, oh yeah, now I don't have to describe it. I could just use this one word. So tell me about this website. You went to it and it picked up your IP address in Canada and knew you spoke English.
It must have. Because I was actually looking for a U.S. company that was started in Seattle called Danielson, and that had been purchased by a company called Calcutta. But my typing and my spelling is not the best. So instead, the first one that came up was this Swedish Danielson, which is an indirect competitor to Calcutta, but really direct to consumer website and amazing fishing reels and long history. And it resonated with me. Like I am their target customer. I don't do that type of fishing, but I'm interested in it. And yeah, I had a great time just browsing their website. And the only reason I knew I was at international website is they had, I think it was kroners was the currency that came up. So they didn't automatically change the currency, but that's easy enough for me to do. The rest of it resonated with me. And
right.
And yeah, it was a good experience for somebody who's, looking for something and stumbles on a new company with a website that's been translated quite well.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting. So it automatically came up in English because it could pick your location, but it probably was not automated like machine translation because you said it resonated with you. So it really captured the meanings and the words. But enough about those companies. I want to talk about you. So you're into water first, since I gave that whole big introduction about water. What is it about water that draws you, or what do you do with water?
Yeah, so I grew up on an island, Vancouver Island, one of the biggest islands in the world off the West Coast. And I started off, working for my dad in geology and having amazing kind of exposure to that industry in mining. But one of my first real jobs working with somebody else was on a commercial fishing boat. And I did that off and on, paying my way through university and had great experiences fishing all the way up to Alaska and down to the border between BC and Washington State. And I really returned to that kind of in the last 7 years. And I don't care if I'm under the water, on top of the water, near the water. I just really enjoy myself. We have some marine clients as well. I just decided not to bid on a very large request for proposal for a company building Coast Guard cutters and things like that. But I'm able to boats, marine, shipping with any customers that come up. And yeah, I enjoy anything that has to do with water. I volunteered for the search and rescue water side, and yeah, I love it. And I'll go on vacation if we get a chance to go down the coast, go down to Mexico, go down to California, Washington State. I've got a friend in Boston. I'd love to get on the East Coast on the water and stuff. He's a big boater. So any chance I get, I will say yes to
Oh,
going to
good.
water.
Well, come visit me. I have a pool in my backyard, so we got a little taste of water and not far from the beach. Yeah, my youngest son, I'll tangent off on here and then we'll get back to your company. But he took to water immediately and he could go off the diving board and swim to the side by himself with no flotation devices at a year and a half.
That is amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
my kids want to do that, but I don't know how to support. My daughter, she's just 2.5. My son is getting there, and he's 5. But yeah, it's amazing. Like we are natural in water, and yeah, I mean, there's kids who free dive at 1 and 2.
Wow.
They just know how to hold their breath. It's natural to them. But
Yeah.
also kids do drown. So I have this duality where it's yeah, I want kids to be super safe around water, and I want them to be exposed to water.
Yeah, I taught swimming, so I was able to, to assist when I saw he had the capabilities. Plus, it wasn't my teaching, it was his determination to keep up with his older brother at that age. But anyway, back to you. So you've done all this traveling, you've been all over, you understand the importance of language, and you start a company. Tell us a little bit about your company.
Yeah, so I've got a headhunting firm. It's called Red Seal Recruiting, and manufacturing and construction clients are our biggest sectors. We do service mining, utilities, municipalities, and really those people who work outside. So either applied engineers, foremen, managers, sometimes up to GMs for companies that do deliver services that are not in high tech, they're not in accounting. They either move earth or they manufacture things. So it's the people who use their hands and their head. And there's not enough anywhere in the world, right? Our demands for combating climate change, so alternative energy, getting more efficient in production. The people who actually can do that stuff, there's not enough of. There's often a shortage of high tech people, but people who are kind of those applied, skilled people, the people who can translate, how are we going to build this bridge, both from an engineering side, but also a practical side, are few and far between. And yeah, we're fortunate to be based in Canada. We've got US employees. We do business with US and Canadian clients. And really want to grow that to include other free trade countries such as Mexico, because we've got a new recruitment manager who comes from Deloitte in South America, and really you can't just invent new technologies and change the world if you're thinking, oh, I'll just recruit locally and I'll have the best company. Apple doesn't do that, Tesla doesn't do that. They think, okay, can I find the best people in the world to build our companies? And I really think most companies need to do that, because there's not a company I've talked to in the last kind of 4 years who has said, I've got enough people, I can hire them all locally. We're good at that. We can target people locally, but even part of that is Canada, the United States are just melting pots of cultures and languages. So, if you're in the United States and you're doing recruitment, you need to have some Spanish skills, I think.
Right. So probably at this point, listeners are saying, okay, I don't get it. You're a recruitment firm. You've got a specialty, which is manufacturing and construction, which is different than most other headhunting firms. You talked about translating, engineering into actual bridges, but there's a twist too that you have that pulls in languages and cultures. And this is why, your company originally reached out to us for some translation. And I thought it was a brilliant business model. Can you talk about those languages and cultures and what you do in that area?
Yes. So fortunately, we do have a great diverse team internally who speak at least 6, 7 languages. And we've had really good success recruiting, I would say, expats or recent immigrants domestically, but also internationally as well. We had some great success taking people from the United States to come to Canada, and also recruiting people from other countries to come as well. And really having people who speak the language makes a really big difference. Right. So we have people who speak Tagalog for a lot of people from the Philippines. There are many languages in the Philippines, but that's the national language. We've got people who speak Spanish. And one thing we need to do is recognize those internal team players and promote their language skills, but also use that as an attraction tool. Mm-hmm. I saw Toyota is doing interviews in 5 languages for a local plant in Ontario. And like, I was just flabbergasted because, it's usually, send us your resume in English and we require English. And I'm like, it frustrates me because I'll find amazing people and they'll have too thick an accent for a client. And I'm like, this isn't a person who's answering the phone at your company. Right. And everybody has spoken to people with an accent. So nothing frustrates me more than a company that decides not to hire somebody because they don't communicate the same way as them. Right. So definitely we push clients. We'll ask clients off the bat, and we won't take on a client who has that kind of view that you need to speak perfect, in their mind, English and not have an accent. We're going to make sure that our clients are open to everybody. And then we also are really trying to promote for candidates and also owners of companies. There's a fellow who came and he's doing an MBA, and he's ran, probably $10 million companies in Peru. And he's looking for a director or a GM role here. And I'm like, perfect. I'd love to talk to you. I don't know if I'll be able to place you with one of my clients, but I'll help you in your job search. And, down the road, I hope you come back to us, and we will have stuff on our website that resonates with you. Yes, we've got some automatic translation, but I'd love to have, some dedicated pages that really resonate with that audience, that are not translated by a machine, because you always lose something. So really well translated, and it'll make, I think, that person feel comfortable in reaching out to us, knowing that, we recognize where they're coming from, but also we recognize people who might come in the future as well. And, it might be somebody who's second generation, but they speak another language in their home. Like at my home, we speak Korean at my home. I don't speak any Korean. I understand a lot of it, but my son speaks Korean almost as well as he speaks English. And if he goes to a website and he sees, they have Korean, like, it'll resonate with him amazingly. So,
right. So you're not only looking for employees for your clients that might, you're looking for good employees, but telling your clients, even if they have a heavy accent, this is a good person. But it's not only the heavy accent, you're looking to place people that in Canada or the US that might not speak English.
Yeah. And it's, I think anybody can learn a language. And this day and age, we just helped some people from the Ukraine. And, I talked to this woman and I didn't quite understand what she did or what her husband did, but between Google Translate and photos, I figured out she's a materials engineer for the largest construction firm residential construction firm in Russia. So building tens of thousands of units. And the sentiment due to the war in Russia towards Ukrainians is not great. So she wanted to get out. And and between, just having a rudimentary understanding of English and using Google Translate, she was able to interview well with a customer. And, I never wish ill of anybody, but I was happy to take that person out of Moscow, bring them to Canada, where we're desperate for enough housing, like most regions in North America. And she can bring that expertise that she learned in the Ukraine and Russia, and share that expertise with local engineers, help them build residential units much faster. And, I I think the company is much better off. And if I just said, oh, I don't really understand, but we took the time, and I now have a really good understanding of what she did and her husband did. And her husband works for a friend's company, an entrepreneur organization members company as well, right? So two great people helping grow the economy versus two people who were in a situation they didn't want to be in. And that's due to some of the changes we've had just in the last 10 years with technology, but also recognizing that, hey, you got to take the time when somebody doesn't speak the same language as you, because between the two of you, you might be able to communicate really well, but don't just assume because you don't understand their resume or understand a message that you can't, I think, move the needle in business.
Right. So what languages do you work with?
I don't care what language people speak at this stage. Definitely there are obstacles, and some clients will say, their English level isn't at the right stage. But one of the questions we always ask any company is, do you have people who are hired in your company who are trained outside of the US? And that gives me an idea, because I'm really interested in diversity in hiring, but it also gives me an idea whether or not they are looking at that sort of thing. And they say, no, we've only hired local people. I say, oh, are you interested? Because recent immigrants are usually underemployed, either maybe undercompensated or don't have full-time employment or aren't in the right field. So they're a really good target community to really headhunt, to give them better opportunities. And there's been so many times when we've helped somebody, find their first job in their field after, maybe 4 years of struggling to find that job. And yeah, definitely making sure that employers are open to people who've been trained outside of their area. Not asking people to cut corners, maybe hire a doctor who isn't certified, but really, are they interested in looking at candidates who are not what they might identify as the ideal fit, because they didn't graduate from the right university or go to the right school or have that perfect accent.
Right, right. What percent of the clients that you're talking to do you think are open to it now? And you're located in Canada. What part of Canada?
We're on the West Coast, so I'm in Victoria, British Columbia. So
Okay.
just kind of a stone's throw from Vancouver. I think well over 95%. I have had difficult experiences. We did have a company that, was truly discriminating on their face of it, that we had to terminate an agreement with. But most, are open. And if you see some hesitation in your sales process, we always like to dig a little bit deeper, right? And if we see that there's not a values fit, of diversity, we won't do business with that company. It's not one of our written values that, we pride in diversity. It's something ingrained. Everybody knows it, right? When you see our team, when we talk to each other, we're interested in other holidays and stuff. So, but most companies either have a good understanding of diversity hiring, or they're interested in it. And especially in an age where you can't find enough people. Anybody who's like, no, I just want somebody who looks and sounds like me, that business is not going to succeed in this day and age.
No, no. All the statistics show. I mean, if you've got a diverse, like the 20 to 50% more productive and profitable from all the research that I've read. So
I'd love to be 20 to 40% more profitable. That's a good goal for any company. Yeah.
Yeah. But see, look at how well you're doing because of the diversity that you have. I mean, I have not run into any other recruitment firm that focuses on hiring people with language skills in the industries that you're in, it makes a lot of sense. So I was just thrilled to see, the area that you've carved off.
Yeah, and that's because, both the United States and Canada, we export globally our talent as well. So some of my former coworkers used to start up pulp and paper plants in Asia,
Mhm.
and they came back later in their careers as senior managers domestically, and I was like, I don't think we're ever going to find enough really good people for this project. And they said, oh, well, I worked with these great people internationally, right? And I'm like, well, why don't we bring them? And also, once we bring them, why don't we find if there's more people like them already here, underemployed? And we see that. We made a placement last week for a mining client, and he was an electrical engineer in the Philippines.
Mhm.
And here he's an electrician, definitely, going to be a leader with that depth of understanding. And, we placed him last week, and, we have traditionally undermarketed to the Filipino community domestically, but, it's a huge immigrant population. So if you're looking at within the United States and Canada, you've got people from Latin America, Mexico, China, India, Philippines. You really have to think, oh, is there another 10 million people within our country, or 3 million or 1 million people that I could tap into? And
Yeah.
it might be as easy as translating a page and then finding out who within your organization might have that cultural background or expertise or interest, right? And somebody might say, oh, I traveled there. I know a little bit. I know the local community here. Great. Well, let's reach out to them. Let's start doing some outreach to that community. And I think that, really, really makes sense. So who do you have internally that is interested and has experience? And then how can we market to them? And, just adding a page to your website. We've been in business 18 years. 18 years ago, we should have got started on doing a really good translation for those target communities. But at least we're working on it now, and we've had automated translation throughout our history. But if you don't invest in it, you're never going to see the dividends.
So talk to me about the translation. I'm really interested in how you think about this as a business owner with experience that values it so much. You say you should have translated 18 years ago, and you're using automated translation, but you know the value of good translation. So where's that stopgap in there as to why you haven't procured the quality translation, really made a focus on it?
Squirrel.
Squirrel brain.
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, and as an entrepreneur, there's so much going on, right? And we're looking at costs of things, but also we need to see that ROI. But also you need to listen to your team, right? And I'm fortunate now that we have a recruitment manager who comes from Latin America. So we've got that. And then we also have team members who are mentioning, I'd like to reach out to my community. I'm like, great. So let's not only just reach out to the community, let's have a dedicated page that works with SEO. Mr. Beast, the biggest YouTuber in the world, has fully translated videos. I think for Spanish, he has the same person who does Spider-Man's translation for the Marvel movies. So they're like, oh, why does Mr. Beast sound like Spider-Man? Well, it's because he's translating the whole thing, right? So, it really takes listening to my team, who is diverse, and getting them to take the initiative, right? Because even though I say, oh, that's a good idea, it's really the team that's really going to execute on things. Like I try not to be involved in the day-to-day decision making. We use EOS, and it can be one of our quarterly goals. Like, is one of our quarterly goals to translate and get something up in 10 languages. Who owns that? And really that decision-making power is distributed decision-making power is important, but having somebody who's accountable, and that's easily something we can do in 90 days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't have to be, one of your daily activities but it definitely should be, a possible priority in your quarterly planning or your annual planning.
Right, right. Yes, because I think it was, you have a marketing person that reached out, and she hadn't done translation before, which is, we get so many calls like that. And it was, we want to do the whole website. And you've got a very extensive website. and you're attracting employers and employees. And so I didn't see any value or potential ROI for translating the material geared at the employers, because the people that are hiring are probably English speaking. If you're talking Canada and the US, which we were, on that call.
Yeah. But even, there are so many leaders of amazing companies who, English is a second language to them, right? Within
Yes.
Canada and the US, right? So just having one friendly translated page, and, they might be visiting a subsidiary in another country. And, I was in Quebec, and my Google, my YouTube is still marketing to me in French. I don't know why, but I'm sure if I search in Google, I'll get some French YouTube videos that come up, right? So if somebody's down in Mexico and they have a manager resign, and they search down there, and they're like, oh, I'm looking for a GM manufacturing recruiter in Seattle, and we actually have a page that's in Spanish that'll resonate with that GM if they're down in Mexico, and even a Canadian or a US person down in Seattle, they might be, they're on the Wi-Fi, it's showing up as in Mexico. They might get that translated page and be like, oh. And if they speak their English as a second language GM, they're like, oh, great. Oh, they've got a page in Spanish for me. Oh, and then they've got everything in English. Great. And then all of a sudden we're differentiating from all these other firms, right? So I definitely think having at least one SEO friendly page is a great investment in, at least 5 to 10 languages that, are very prevalent within North America.
Okay. That's interesting that you say that, because it wasn't, because when I was having the conversation with her, it was, well, these are the people that we want to attract and that we're placing. And so I couldn't see the need for that. But you're right, doing a landing page with the employers, no matter where they are, and pulling those people in that are going to be open to hiring others, no matter what their language is, or building that community.
Yeah.
Language. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's amazing. Like, we think, we're doing a little bit of work on our holiday. But if you're in Quebec, if you're in Mexico, if you decide to go to, China on your vacation, the search might be slightly different. And, I have a good friend who's got a great manufacturing company. They're a client. They build high-speed boat seats to protect Coast Guard and military people at high speed. And English is his second language for him. So if he's searching for, a manufacturing recruiter while he's in China, but he's searching for back here because he's lost one of his managers or his engineer, and we've got a page that comes up, it'll serve that page in Mandarin or Cantonese first. And he'll be like, oh, great. Oh, Red Seal. Yeah, I know them. Right. So it's just one of the things that I need to think, who can my target customer be? And they're not all, a white HR woman who's 30 to 40, right?
Right.
Definitely, we think of our target personas, but you're really limiting yourself if you think, my target persona is one person, because, they are, we have diverse client base, and we need to think about, making that extra investment to market to them.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense to me. So then, yes, if you were to boil it down, like, you wouldn't have to do your whole website, but it's more than a landing page, because you're targeting the employers and the employees. So you're really thinking about doing a microsite. So you've got the About Us, something for employers and something for employees.
Yeah, and then they can go down one of your two streams or funnels, which for us is candidates and clients, right? So we have two separate funnels, and then they can translate using the translate tool, or if their English is good enough, which it likely is, they can just continue to read on in English, but you've spoken to them, right? And you can see the difference when you're traveling, and they expect you to be a dumb North American.
Yeah.
And you just say 2 to 3 words in their language, right? And say thank you in their language. They're like, just a little smile comes to their face, and you want to make your customers smile even before they're your customer, right? So if you greet them you're well on your way to having a customer, or in our case, our supply or candidates, right? So we need to build those two funnels and get that supply chain happening.
Right, right. That makes sense. And your website is like that hello when it's done in language and you pull them in. Okay. Now you have talked multiple times about SEO optimized, but then also the machine translation. Are you finding that people are finding you through the automated translation? I don't think of that as SEO optimized.
Yeah, so definitely, I think if you are seeing the experience of Ukrainians, because hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, actually millions of Ukrainians, have left Ukraine due to the war, they are often doing their job search in Ukrainian and also in Russian, right?
Yeah.
But they are able to use other tools, right, to translate full websites. So definitely, I think if they're doing a search and they're looking for jobs in Canada in a specific niche, if you have at least one page in Ukrainian,
Yeah.
and they're doing a search while they're in Poland, and I think you're likely to be ranked fairly high if you have at least one page. But definitely SEO is super important. And that to me is writing good content and lots of it, right? So if I was to determine that, 50% or 25% of our placements in the United States were coming from people who speak Spanish as a first or a second language, yeah, it's a great investment to spend $10,000, but at the very least, it's good to spend $300 or $500 to have at least one page that will work if they're doing a search in Google in Spanish, or if they're doing a search while they're traveling, which they're likely. I have a good friend. He's born in Colombia. His daughter was born in Canada. He's in Colombia right now doing business, right? And so if he's searching and I'd have nothing on my website, I think the first thing Google will serve up to him is something in Spanish. So, I really have to think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you got a little bit of work that you're planning on doing on your site, and at Rapport International, what we recommend is think about your strategy, which you are clear on. Think about the technology and how you can leverage it, doing, like a microsite to pull people in, and then maybe leveraging some of the automated for translation for blogs and information that's not as important to bring them through the buyer's journey. Then you think about the process, how, what's a simple way to get it done, and where do I need the high quality versus the lower quality. So certainly, very interested in talking to you more about that so you can realize
And
your
are
goals.
you seeing clients, because like this is a bit of a paradigm shift for me when I see Mr. Beast. He's got hundreds of millions of followers, but he's done dedicated channels. I've got a YouTube channel called Fishing Means Business. And actually one of my editors is in Argentina. And I'm like, oh, why don't we do one in Spanish? And I can actually go into my analytics and see the number of people who speak Spanish or I think in the US and elsewhere. How many customers do you see that are saying, oh, we're going to do a full investment where we're doing all of our marketing in both languages or multiple languages?
It depends. It goes back to the strategy.
Yeah.
So what I'll often see is people will start out with a landing page or a microsite.
Yeah.
And then as they grow, they add more content in there, or big, we worked with a packaging company that had offices all over the world, but they only sold certain products in those countries. So what they did was they built out a big spreadsheet and said, we want translation for these products in these countries, but not the other ones if we don't offer them there. So, you if you think strategically about the content, it works better. And then the other thing is we'll see clients that will track their metrics. And so like we had one client that had a lot of people coming in from Germany. So they said, oh, okay, well, we're going to translate our website into Germany. And they saw their sales go up there. We had another client that was tracking their metrics, and they could see that certain blogs were getting more hits. So they decided those were the blogs they were going to translate for their language. So they might release a blog in English, but then a few months later, they'd decide whether they were going to translate it or not, because they could see how valuable the information was. So we see that's why we spend a lot of time at Rapport International talking about strategy. What are you trying to accomplish, and who are you trying to speak to develop that?
Yeah, and that's great. And we got to think about it. Anybody who's in the business to consumer side of things, I think Amazon and Costco are both in at least over a dozen countries, right?
Oh, easy, yeah.
Right. So anybody who's in that B2C space and wants to sell, it's like, oh, how big is the market? And I'm looking at an acquisition, and I'm like, oh, we could sell globally, but who can help me sell globally? And it could be one of those partners. It could be Amazon or Costco. And, what markets are they in? How could I, translate and then sell direct to the consumer? Because we might get our gateway in through Amazon, but we might then start to see traffic that comes directly from those consumers to be able to sell directly to them at higher margins. So yeah, it's a fascinating world when you kind of look past your geographic borders, but also think about these cultural borders that are within our countries and then internationally as well. Like the markets are immense.
Yeah, and that's what we see with e-commerce companies. If they don't take control of their global marketing, then what can happen is some of the platforms like Amazon or Shopify, I don't know about Costco, they may stick in automated translation, and you're losing customers there. You're better off having it in English, particularly because consumers buy on emotions, and you want to connect them in with that. So you don't have to do your whole website, and you want to keep consistent across the language of what something's called. We've had companies where they used one company that used us to translate all their product names and their packaging. And this was years ago. They haven't searched anybody else since then, but they decided to go to somebody else for their catalog that was going to their sales floor. And they gave them all new names. So the salespeople got the catalog, and they're like, we don't know what any of these products are. So they came back, and they've never strayed from us because we keep that consistency of voice. So people know what the products are, and they know what to expect.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. So in Russia and Ukraine, they call cabinetry making furniture making. So in North America, it's like you're building cabinets or you're doing millwork. And I just couldn't understand what this one individual does. And I'm like, he sent me pictures. I'm like, oh, you're a cabinet maker, cabinet installer. And yeah, they have that consistency of furniture, right? Which, if you're marketing to Russia, you're marketing to Ukraine, you need to know. But, until that translation happens, and it didn't translate, like when we were using Facebook Translate, and like it didn't translate until I had the images. But then once you get on that same page and you want to sell to people consistently, you don't want to be switching from Facebook Translate to Google Translate, because it's probably going to be wrong anyways. So yeah, definitely doing it the right way makes sense to me.
Yeah, and that's so fascinating. I love how you talk about using pictures to get more clarity on the types of jobs that people are doing. I mean, that's a brilliant way to communicate with people.
Yeah, and it works for SEO. So one of the ways that I've been in this business 18 years, and we talk about SEO, and I'll have very smart people say, "Oh, well, you're not going to compete with Indeed.com, and you're not going to compete with Monster, and you're not going to compete with," and I'm like, just watch me, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and we've had images on our job board forever. And if you go to Indeed, you can spend tens of thousands of dollars as an employer on Indeed, but you can't put up a lot of custom images. Every job ad we have, you can put a custom image in, you can embed a video, right? And we really have to think, images resonate, languages resonate, right? And we need to be doing these things to help, both get conversions, whether we're asking for candidates to send their resume, clients to apply, or in the direct to consumer side of things, people to buy, right? Or sign up.
Yeah, yeah. And images are so important because we'll work with clients on how are they culturally adapted, like if the images just don't make sense. But what you're talking about is like a job, and those images are going to transfer through and add so much clarity and depth to the communication that you're doing. You were talking about this, a couple of places I want to jump to. The first was you were talking about this e-commerce company. Did I send you a copy of my book?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm not an avid reader with two young kids, but I would love, yeah, I'd love to read your book, and yeah, I'm interested in writing a book myself soon, but yeah.
Oh, I can walk you through that process. I actually enjoyed it. There's probably few people that say that, but it's called The Language of Global Marketing, and it digs into all the questions you were asking. So if anybody's listening and is interested in it, you can find it on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com or any of the places you buy books. And I also did an audio recording. So if you listen to those, I can't send you a free copy of that because I don't have it, but you can get the audio version off of there. But it breaks down the whole strategy, technology, process, and quality, and all the special considerations that you'd need for consumer products. So I'll send you a copy. I'll get your address afterwards. The other thing that I wanted to ask, and then we are out of time, but what are you seeing with your customers and how they're managing people that might not speak the language of the majority of the workforce? How have they adapted to training and company meetings and all those company parties? And
Interesting. I'm going to have to ask. There's a firm on the East Coast. They hired at least 18 Ukrainians, and this is their first Christmas with such a big demographic shift influx. So definitely one of the things I think is the bare minimum is recognizing other people's holidays. So I'm not one of these people who's like don't celebrate Christmas. Don't celebrate more.
yes.
And like learn, like send me the pictures. Like we've got team members in on the East Coast, West Coast, and several internationally, and yeah, and I'm happy to celebrate Christmas and talk about Santa and Christ, and tell me about Dhaliwal, tell me about the celebration in the Philippines, tell me about Independence Day where you're from, right? And share that, because in this remote environment, these are things that kind of bring us together when you're like, oh, that's a big celebration for you, whether it's Day of the Dead or this is your first Christmas, what does it look like, what do people do, right? And I think that's more important than sending a gift card or having a great Christmas party where everybody gets drunk and doesn't remember it. We've had lots of those, right? But if we can connect with our employees who are remote and find out what this holiday season means to them, I think that's a great opportunity, because if somebody's looking at leaving you, which is a really important thing, what is our retention going to be? And you're an organization that not only just has things on your website, but also recognizes it internally and externally and talks about it and celebrates other holidays and other cultures, you're going to be doing a lot better at retention.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I think that's so important. We were talking about the marketing, where how do you attract, engage, and then delight? You bring them through the buyer's journey. With HR, you have to attract, retain, and then engage to make sure that they're not going to leave, and you're training all the time. So yeah. Yeah. If you have any clients that you think are doing a good job with that, send them all over. We'll get them on the podcast here so they can talk about
when
it.
it's a perfect time to think about it, right? Because this is a holiday season, and Christmas is different for every culture, right? The winter season, and it means different things to other people. So
Right. Yeah, I lived in Mexico a couple of years when I was a kid, and Three Kings Day was really big down there. It was in the beginning of January, so it was, it wasn't Christmas and then it's done. It was the Three King. But enough about me. What final recommendations do you have for people that are doing global marketing or, attracting clients?
wow. Yeah, definitely just keep the dialogue going. Look for those people, right? Look at the bottom of their resume. and, ask questions. Tell me about your experience there, because you'll find a lot of people leave off some of their international experience. And, you might find that somebody who in your team or somebody who's applying for a job at your company has lots of experience that can help you in the long run, and asking questions about their history, well before they, came to the United States or Canada is something that you should definitely do, because you might be like, oh, in your 3-year or 10-year plan is to become a global leader. You might have some of those leaders in your organization. You might have people in your organization who know who those potential leaders are in their network as well, right? So ask those questions. Say, put it out there. If your vision is to, expand to Mexico or Latin America or globally, put that vision out there in your vision. We run under EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Other people use scaling up. Lots of people do planning, but put that vision out there to your team, and don't hesitate to say you want to be the best in the world. Our latest move has been into North America and Latin America because of the free trade agreements. And, our team has embraced it, and they say, yeah, we want to have the best talent available for our clients. And, it doesn't matter if their first language is English, Spanish, or French. We want to be able to get those people.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right. You've been exposed to all sorts of languages. You've been talking about them. I got to ask, what's your favorite foreign word?
Oh, I'm part of Toastmasters and Nuance. Nuance is the title or name of our Toastmasters group. And it means the same thing in 3 languages.
So English, French,
and Spanish.
Oh, Nuance is the same in Spanish. Well,
yeah.
Oh, I never knew that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I believe so. But yeah, I mean, I love lots of Korean words, lots of Spanish words, lots of French words. I'm not fluent. The closest I got was learning Spanish in Guatemala and traveling through North, Central, and South America many decades ago. But, I enjoy watching a Korean drama or a Korean action movie because I pick up lots of the family stuff since my in-laws are Korean. So.
Oh, that's great. You truly are a global citizen. I love it. Where can people find you if they'd like to reach out?
Yeah, so definitely Red Seal Recruiting. I'm on YouTube under Red Seal Recruiting, but also FMB, Fishing Means Business, is one of my passion projects. And it includes that marine water component. Mm-hmm. And I'm on everything else, but definitely reach out to me through our website. Our About Us page is a great place to find us.
Okay, so that's Red Seal, RED, seal like the water animal, SEAL, recruiting.com.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, but Red Seal Kael, Kael. And if you Google Kael, there's somebody who's a hockey player I really respect in kind of the Michigan area, but I'm one of the only KAELs out there.
Okay. Well, Kael, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was a really good discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Wendy. Talk to you soon.
All right. And for listeners, thank you for tuning in. I hope you learned something from this today. I certainly loved getting Kael's perspective on how he's looking at translation and growing his business and the diversity and the inclusion that he does. So if you have something you'd like to say to Kael or the group of listeners, you can go to the Facebook. It's Global Marketing and Growth, and join there and get in with the community, or buy the book if you have more questions and want to learn something. That's it for now. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
That's a wrap for this session. A big thanks to you for listening to the Global Marketing Show. Hope you had just as much fun as I did. New sessions launch weekly on all places you find podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and of course on our website. If you know someone interested in this topic, please tell them about us. Au revoir for now.